Hi, hello, my name is Gomer Joseph. I hope you've all been having a great day so far. Welcome back to another True Crime Tuesdays video. If you are new, I welcome you. Today I'll be discussing the unsolved disappearance of Emanuela Orlandi. As I researched this case, it really blew my mind as to how crazy and how deep her case goes. Her family was definitely not prepared to find out that her disappearance was most likely linked to political and even religious conspiracies and cover ups. Now, I encourage you all to do your own research with this case and not to just look at my video for all of the information. Here we go. Emanuela Orlandi was born on January 14th of 1968 in Rome, Italy, to parents Ercole and Maria Orlandi. Now, Emanuela had four other siblings. She had a brother named Pietro, a sister named Natalina, another sister named Federica, and of course another sister named Maria. Emanuela grew up in the gated Vatican City where the Pope resides. Pretty much, the Vatican City is the Roman Catholic headquarters. Now, as for Emanuela, she was a girl who loved listening to and even playing music. She played the flute and sung in the choir. She was very close to her family and enjoyed hanging out with her friends. On June 22nd of 1983, Emanuela is 15 at this time, and she needed to practice for this end of the year show for her music school. She asked her older brother Pietro if he could give her a ride, especially since it was like she was able to go ahead and walk to school, but since it's June, and I can imagine, with it being Italy, it'll be like very humid and hot. So since it was really hot, she just really did not feel like walking to school, so she asked her older brother Pietro to go ahead and drive her. Pietro refused, so he and Emanuela went back and forth, but he was standing his ground, so Emanuela did decide to go ahead and walk to school on her own. To this day, refusing to give her a ride is Pietro's biggest regret, because when she left that house, that was the last time that he would ever see his younger sister again. Like I said, the family resided in the Vatican City. Now, the school was outside of the Vatican City, and it was pretty much a gated town. Later that evening, Emanuela calls home speaking with her older sister Federica. She tells Federica that an older man came up to her claiming to be a representative of Avon, which is the cosmetic company. And Emanuela is stating that this man offered her a small job to pretty much hand out Avon flyers to people. Not only that, but Emanuela's sister Maria was supposed to meet with her that night. When Maria and her friends reached to the spot where they were supposed to meet Emanuela, Maria noticed that her sister was nowhere to be seen. Since Emanuela didn't show up, Maria just assumed that she just decided to change her mind. So Maria went back home, and once she reaches to, the house, she asks everyone if Emanuela arrived back home, and the answer that everybody else was giving was that Emanuela did not return. As it was getting late and Emanuela was a no-show, the whole family was truly beginning to worry. So they began searching for her, and even not only searching, around the town for her, but they were also reaching out to hospitals, but they were able to find nothing. Since the family is having such a tough time trying to go ahead and locate her, they eventually decide to contact the police and report her missing. As for the police, they decided that it was too soon to go ahead and report Emanuela missing. Now, again, I'm not really familiar with Italian law, so I don't know what was up with Italy back in the day. Like, I really hope that they really changed this, but you have this 15-year-old girl who is nowhere to be found. Her family, you can see that her family is scared to death, but you decide to send the family away. Like I said, the Vatican is a gated community. It's inside of Rome, which is like a very huge place. So I can imagine that the child could be anywhere. But yet the police has this idea that it's just too soon to start looking for her. Like, have the police never like heard of stories of other missing children who have gone missing but never came back home? Like, I honestly don't get it. Like, make it make sense. So since the Vatican is a gated community, what makes things worse is that, like I said before, Emanuela's school was outside of the Vatican. So when midnight reached, the gates were closed. Emanuela is missing, the police are refusing to get involved, so the family reaches out to extended family to go ahead and help look for Emanuela. They began roaming the streets of Rome trying to find her. If you think that the police were trash already, they would prove themselves to be even more trash when Emanuela's parents went to file a missing persons report again. Now, Emanuela's parents, they show her photo to the police, but when the police see Emanuela's photo, they tell her parents not to worry because Emanuela is really not that pretty to be snatched. So since Emanuela is quote unquote too pretty to be snatched, the police suggest that Manuela ran off on her own. Listen, like, I totally understand that it is illegal to put your hands on the cops, but I kid you not, like, it would literally take the Holy Spirit not to smack the police across the face for saying something so insensitive and so ignorant to these worried parents. Regardless of what the police said, the parents decided to go ahead and do their own outreach. They pretty much handed out flyers of Emanuela's face and even contacted newspapers, and inside the newspapers they had their phone number available if anybody had information about when they last saw Emanuela, or if they think that they saw Emanuela. So after they put their phone number inside of the newspaper, the family would receive calls after Emanuela went missing. They would receive all sorts of calls, but there are two specific calls that really caught their attention. These two specific calls came from two different people named Pierre Luigi and Mario, which I find to be very, very weird because it's the same names as the Mario brothers, and I'm not sure. Like, I know that the Super Mario games like came out in the '80s. Like, did the Super Mario Brothers come out in like 1983? But anyways, I just thought that was really weird. Anyway, the two different calls both described a girl like Emanuela, but instead of calling her Emanuela, they were calling this girl named Barbara or Barbara Ella, and they point out that she was selling Avon stuff with a flute in her bag. And of course, like, I don't think I remember to go ahead and say this. When Emanuela left her home, she left with a flute and her flute case. Not only did they describe this girl selling Avon stuff and having the flute, but they also mentioned that she needed to sing for school, which was, very true. Like, Emanuela did also sing in the choir. Something crazier happened with the calls. Now, after news got out about Emanuela's disappearance, it actually reached the Pope. Now, the Pope was publicly speaking about Emanuela's disappearance. So after the Pope publicly speaks about her, the family receives an anonymous call from who they believe was an American speaking Italian. This person who they received the call from, they hear this man's voice, but not only do they hear the voice of this, who they believe is an American, but they also hear the voice of a girl saying National School Vittorio Emanuele II. As the family hears this voice, they are certain that the girl who they hear is Emanuela's voice. Here's the downside. The person who called stated that if somebody named Mehmet Ali Aksha is not released from prison, then they will take Emanuela's life. If you're like me and you're not really familiar with Mehmet Ali Aksha was a man who attempted to take the Pope's life. Now, I forgot to go ahead and mention which specific Pope this was, but this specific Pope was Pope John Paul II. So Mehmet tried to go ahead and take the Pope's life 2 years prior. With the messages that these kidnappers were, leaving around, these alleged kidnappers were definitely not playing. Like, they contacted a reporter and told them to go to this specific location, trying to go ahead and show proof that they had Emanuela. The proof that the alleged kidnappers had was a photocopy of Emanuela's music school ID, documents of the school tuition payments, and a handwritten letter from Emanuela stating, "With much affection, your Emanuela." Even though this, all these items were shown to the police, for the police, it just wasn't enough proof for them, because especially since they felt like the note was written by somebody who was calm, and they felt like it wasn't written by anybody who, because like the handwriting wasn't shaky. And of course, when you're kidnapped, you're not usually calm. So they felt like, because of the way that it was written, they felt like it wasn't written by a girl who had been kidnapped. Because of this, the police requested even more proof. The kidnappers did just that. They sent a tape of a girl who they state is Emanuela, and in this recording, it sounds like this girl is in agony, but investigators believe that it was like a recording from some sort of porn film. Like I mentioned before, the kidnappers did threaten, or the alleged kidnappers did threaten to take Emanuela's life, but they set a deadline. So they made a deadline for Mehmet Ali Aksha to be released. When the due date had been reached, the alleged kidnappers, contacted an Italian priest, stating that they will go ahead and take Emanuela's life if Mehmet Aksha is not released. The deadline is reached. Mehmet was not released, but Emanuela's body wasn't sent back deceased like the alleged kidnappers had initially threatened. Sadly, the family is still doing their best to go ahead and try to find out where Emanuela is. Now 10 years pass by. It's 1993. Her family receives a call from the prosecutor's office showing them a picture, a pretty grainy picture of a woman found in Luxembourg. The thing about this woman is that she was a part of a convent. So the family travels to Luxembourg. They look into this, but to their disappointment, the convent lady was not Emanuela. 12 years passed by. It's 2005. Emanuela's father had sadly passed away without ever knowing what happened to his daughter. But not only that, but the Pope, who was the Pope when Emanuela had vanished, Pope John Paul II, also passed away. So after these two passings, a news station receives a call from this man stating that they should look into this specific crypt. And I hope I'm saying it right. It was the Saint Apollinaire Basilica. This crypt was right next to the school that Emanuela attended. The man who calls claims that Emanuela's body is buried there as a favor that a guy named, I hope I'm saying it right, Renatito did for a guy named Cardinal Poletti. Renatito was the nickname of this Italian crime boss named Enrico De Pitis, who passed away in 1990. When Renatito was alive, he dated a girl named Sabrina Minardi. Now, Sabrina, she was approached by the journalist who received this call, and the thing is that when the journalist was able to go ahead and speak with Sabrina, Sabrina claimed that a girl who she, met, basically, the girl who she met, who was described as Emanuela, and she talks about the day that Emanuela vanished. So when she meets this girl who she believes is Emanuela, she notices that, I'll just put in quotation marks, that Emanuela was with a man and that they were in a car together. As Emanuela is in the car with this man, they drive outside of Rome and reach to this house where a woman named Adelaide would supposedly take care of Emanuela. According to Sabrina, Emanuela was crying and even drugged up by Adelaide in a locked room. Days later, according to Sabrina, Emanuela was moved to another house. Later on, this girl, who Sabrina claims is Emanuela, is driven back to the Vatican, where Sabrina had to give her a ride. From what I gathered, it seemed like Renatito had connections to this other mobster who is actually incarcerated. This man's name is Maurizio Abatino. He spoke to a journalist who believes that Emanuela was most likely taken because of money. When I heard that, I was like thinking to myself, like, it's not like Emanuela's family was really connected like that. So I just assumed that maybe Maurizio believes that Emanuela was being sold. 30 years had gone by since Emanuela went missing. It is 2013, and an Italian news station is called by someone to look into this warehouse of some old film studio called, I hope I'm saying this right too, De Laurentiis. In this old abandoned film studio, what appears to be Emanuela's flute, and the case that the flute was in is discovered. Later on, it's revealed that the person who made this call is named Marco Accetti, and he was stating that he was part of this religious Catholic group to help expand the Catholic faith in Europe. Not only that, but he also claims to be the American who called Emanuela's family all those years ago. I'm gonna try to go ahead and make as much sense as it possibly can. So Marco claims that he tricked Emanuela into her abduction, claiming that her family was in danger of losing the home, then dropped her off at some house for troubled girls. When Marco met Emanuela's brother Pietro on national television, Marco wasn't really saying who hired him to take Emanuela and why, so Pietro was not buying that Marco had taken Emanuela himself. Pretty much the only thing that made him credible was the location of, the flute. And when I was listening to Marco's accounts, like, I was absolutely confused, and he didn't really seem like a genuine guy to me either, because, like, if that's the case, then why in the world do you need that much attention claiming that you kidnapped a teenage girl? My apologies, he faked kidnapped her, but it's like, I'm not gonna go ahead and go down that rabbit hole. Like, what could you possibly gain from saying that you were responsible for this 30-year unsolved mystery? Around that year, another pope was elected. That is Pope, I don't even think I even know how to even say his name. Pope Bergoglio. Because I can't say his name, I'm sorry, like, I really do not want to sound disrespectful, because I can't say his name. I'm just gonna go call him the current pope, because he is the current pope. So the current pope, he meets with the family at this, well, he didn't meet with them, the family met with him, and it was a brief meeting, so I'm gonna go ahead and go into detail with that. So family met with him at this mass that he was speaking at. Like I said, the meeting was brief. He didn't really speak with the family at all, but when the family approached him and, we're talking about Emanuela, he told the family that Emanuela was in the heaven. As for you, Pope, how in the world would you know whether Emanuela is alive or not? Because I don't believe that God was speaking to the Pope giving him this heavenly revelation about Emanuela. Right? Please don't try to go ahead and use this video claiming that I'm trying to go ahead and down talk somebody else's religion. Like, I'm really not, but like, since I am a born again Christian, I do not follow Catholic teachings. I follow the Bible. Because I follow the Bible, I believe in what the Bible says. I believe that one should repent of their sins and trust in Jesus Christ alone to save them, not trusting in their own good works to save them. As for Emanuela's family, like, hearing the Pope tell you that Emanuela is not alive and not wanting to speak on it a bit more, it made them feel some sort of way, understandably. Emanuela's brother Pietro told the Pope that his hope was that Emanuela was still alive, but the Pope, for some reason, stood on his ground that Emanuela was in eternity. Sometime after this meeting, a document was discovered. Now, this document was written in 1998 by Cardinal Lorenzo Antonetti. This document was about Emanuela, and it was made available to a journalist. To make sense of it, the document was pretty much saying that someone knew exactly what happened to Emanuela. But not only was it a specific person, it was pretty much that the Vatican itself knew what happened to Emanuela. The specific details were pretty much explaining the sort of expenses of her removal from the Vatican and the expenses to take care of her in London, England, starting from her disappearance in 1983 to 1997. If that wasn't crazy enough, the document pretty much speculated that Emanuela passed away in London and that her body was sent back to the Vatican. In July 10th of 2019, a tomb where an angel sculpture stood and the place where it is said that 2 German princesses were also buried, this tomb was opened to see if Emanuela was buried there, but when they opened up the tomb, there was nothing. After the opening of this tomb, a friend of Emanuela's spoke up publicly, but she remained anonymous. Emanuela's friend describes how a week before the disappearance, Emanuela revealed that she was messed with and abused by someone close to the Pope. Because of this friend's testimony, it could be motive for the Vatican to want to get Emanuela out of there as soon as possible. Despite all of the time that had passed, Emanuela's family are still working hard to try to locate her. It's been almost 40 full years since Emanuela had gone missing. If she's still alive today, then she'd be 55 years old. My prayer is that God would provide her family with the answers that they have been searching for decades. Praise God that they still haven't lost hope and at least trying to find out what happened to her all those years ago. The God that I serve, the God of the Bible, is an all-seeing God. He knows exactly what happened to Emanuela that day and knows exactly where she is. I thank you all for taking the time in your day to watch this video. If you did like this video, please feel free to hit the like button. If you have any thoughts on this case at all, please leave your thoughts in the comment section below. If you'd like to see more videos from me, please feel free to subscribe and click the bell to be notified about the next video. If there is a certain true crime case that you'd like me to cover, go ahead and let me know. I will see y'all for the next True Crime Tuesdays, and I will talk to y'all later.